Hi, welcome to SBR Videos. I'm Peter Loshak. It's a week 8 in the NFL. We are talking with Chris Andrews from AgainstTheNumber.com. We are going to get some of his thoughts on a couple of NFL games that he thinks are noteworthy with possible betting value at this late point in the week. Chris Andrews, thanks for being with us. What's the first NFL game you'd like to discuss with us this week?
Well, the first game I want to talk about is the early game in London.
Yeah.
I like the Chiefs
Really?
over the Detroit Lions. And, you really look at this Lions team. I know they've fired their offensive coordinator, Joe Lombardi, replaced them with Jim Bob Cooter. Sounds like a joke. It's not. I really never liked the hire of Caldwell as their head coach, really, from the start. Never thought he was much of a coach. I know he took a team to a Super Bowl, but that was really Tony Dungy's team more than anything else. You look at this Lions team, they're the worst in the league at running the football. I don't know. I doubt that's going to change with an offensive coordinator. They're also 24th in the league at stopping the run. They're last in the league against the pass. So really lots of problems on this Lions team. The one thing they do have, Matthew Stafford is a kid with a big arm. He's got Megatron to throw to, and that, maybe they do a little something more with that. On the other side of the ball, you got Chikandrick West, who's come in for Jamal Charles at running back for Kansas City. Listen, we can't expect him to be Jamal Charles, but he did play his first game against Pittsburgh. Very good defense, ran for 110 yards, also had a touchdown. The offensive line played extremely well for the Chiefs. I know the Chiefs also have their problems, but they're coming off a win. I don't know if they can turn their season around. I really kind of doubt it. But they are just in much better shape, I think, playing with much more enthusiasm. They run the ball so much better than Detroit, defend the pass better than Detroit. Just everything that I look at, almost every statistic all the way down the line, gives Kansas City a pretty big nudge. And I know we're laying 3.5. Hate to lay that extra half a point for sure, but I do think Kansas City's the right side. I'm going with Kansas City against Detroit.
I'll tell you what, that surprised me. I thought you were going to say Detroit when I heard you say the early game. I'll tell you what, I saw the line felt like it was a little bit high for me. Then when it went up to 6, I actually did bet it at Detroit plus 6. I just did my call with Brent from BetDSI, and he told me that he had 3 different sharp accounts, all that took Detroit, and that's part of what drove the line down. He said they took them at 6, 5.5, and even at 4.5. I'm glad I got my number at 6. Does that concern you that the line has gone down and that there's been numerous sharp accounts reportedly coming in on Detroit?
Well, taking 6 and laying 3.5 are two different things. And,
right.
So I think that the number did probably get a little bit out of hand when it went up to 6. You never know how these coaching changes are going to affect the team. Helped Miami quite a bit, so maybe it's going to help Detroit as well. But I think there's just a lot of problems on Detroit that go much deeper than the coaching, whereas Miami, I think, had a lot of talent, and the coaching change was really exactly what I needed. Like I said, what they needed. Like I said, when the line went up to 6, I really planned on just passing on this game. Mm-hmm. I really thought the number should be about 4.5, maybe 5. 6, it wasn't enough for me to take the dog. But now that it dropped down to 3.5, I think it's a little enticing on the favorite. Again, if you're going to play the dog, probably should have played him earlier, like you, Peter.
Yeah.
Take the plus 6. At 3.5 for me, that's a play on the favorite.
All right. Well, Brent told me that sharp money did come in, even at plus 4.5. We will see how this one turns out. Interesting analysis there. Chris, what's your second game you'd like to discuss with this week?
The other game I want to discuss is Minnesota over Chicago. Mm-hmm. I like Minnesota. This team, I think, has really been underrated all season. And I think they've covered every single game except for the first one. Yeah. And the line makers just have not quite caught up to them. It's funny because I think the public always kind of likes Minnesota. And it's not like a big, flashy team from a big metropolitan area or anything like that. But I think the public kind of gloms onto them for some reason. But the line makers have not. And this is another one. And I know Chicago maybe's turned their season around a little. Respect for their coach, John Fox. Not a whole lot of respect for Cutler and some of the other players on the team.
They get Alshon Jeffrey back. That's got to help, right?
It's certainly got to help. Listen, they're not quite the disaster I thought they were going to be early in the season. when I thought they were going to be the worst team in the NFL. They're not that. But I do think if you look down the line, Minnesota, again, I like to look at that yards per point as something. Minnesota is one of the more effective teams in the league with their team efficiency. It doesn't take them a lot of yardage to score a point. They require the other team to gain almost 20 yards against them to create a point. Again, that's one of the best in the NFL. And when you see those kind of numbers, that means a team that's well coached. And I think right now Mike Zimmer doing a really good job coaching. I think Teddy Bridgewater is doing a good job for a young quarterback, not making a whole lot of mistakes, putting them in a position where he's not going to cost them the chance at a victory. Of course, they got Adrian Peterson, who's come back this season, has looked strong when they use him properly. And again, their rushing game averaging over 128 yards a game, running the ball. I think as I mentioned, their yards per point differential is very strong. You could say almost the opposite for Chicago. Now, their running game is not bad. It's not bad at all. Passing rating is bad. Their pass defense is pretty bad also, whether you're looking at their passer rating or their yards per attempt. And I talked about the yards per point, and as good as Minnesota is, Chicago's on the exact opposite end. They might be the worst in the league, the least efficient team in the league as far as creating points for themselves and allowing teams to create against them. So I think right now the game's essentially a pick. I put it out to our customers at Minnesota. You can lay up to 1. I still think that's a good play. I think Minnesota the right side.
All right, I would tend to agree with you. The last 2 weeks, Minnesota has notably been a side that reported big sharp action bet against. It didn't really make sense to me either of those weeks. I bet on Minnesota against KC 2 weeks ago, and the sharp action lost. I cashed. Last week, I completely passed, but once again, betting against Minnesota burned sharp money last week. And of course, I agree with you. In general, I'm either feeling like I want to bet on Minnesota or pass on their games each week. And I guess I feel the same way this week as well. Right now, the line is Minnesota -1 market wide. Chris Andrews, thanks so much. Talk to you again next week for NFL Week 9.
Thank you, Peter.